Before we begin, let's take a closer look at the all-new race air intake system developed for the Can Am Maverick. TurnKey UTV's new race air intake system drastically increases throttle response and horsepower while eliminating the restrictive factory intake system. The intake system has been highly engineered and tested to provide maximum airflow to the motor. Their innovative design draws air from within the Maverick cab, ensuring only the clean, dry air is entering the intake. The airbox assembly comes powder-coated in a heat-reflecting metallic silver. The air filter adapter is CNC machined and flow tested, resulting in minimized air turbulence when entering the motor. This results in better throttle response and increased power. The system is designed and manufactured right here in the USA, using only the highest grade American-made materials available. The airbox and cover are built from lightweight CNC-shaped aluminum to minimize weight. Heavy ply, heat-resistant silicone tubing attaches the intake box to the throttle body to maintain lower air temperatures. TurnKey's race air intake system completely eliminates the factory intake system all the way up to the throttle body. The kit also includes a reusable Can air filter, pre-filter, and crankcase breather. The system comes with everything required for installation and can be installed in under 60 minutes utilizing standard household tools. Okay, the first thing we need to do is take the hood off. Once we get the hood off, then we can start with the disassembly of the stock airbox. Okay, we'll start by removing the air inlet off the side of the airbox. Simply unscrew the hose clamp connecting the inlet tube to the side of the airbox. Okay, to make things a little bit easier, we're going to go ahead and remove the air intake duct from the bulkhead. That way we can get it out of the way and have a little more room to work. To do that, just simply loosen the hose clamp. A couple turns, enough to where you can pull it off. That should be enough. Let's reach up in there and pull it off and pull the assembly up and out of the way. We can start by removing the two mounting bolts that hold the airbox in the front. Okay, to remove the mounting bolts, you have to get to these two nuts on the underside. To do that, I use a 10mm socket with about a 12-inch extension. And I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. Okay, as I mentioned a second ago, I use a 10mm socket with about a 12-inch extension, and then I'll use another 10mm socket on the top side. Kind of guide it in there with your hand. Once you get it on there, hold it and use your other wrench to get it loose. Okay, I'll do the same thing on the other side. Okay, the next thing you want to do, it gets a little tricky, but you can reach up inside here past the airbox and release the or loosen the screw on the hose clamp holding the air intake tube to the throttle body. It's the one right here in the video. You can do this with a stubby flat blade screwdriver, reaching up in there and loosening it, and then it should make this assembly of the airbox a lot simpler. Okay, next you'll want to disconnect the PCV vent line from the back of the airbox. It's the clamp just to the left of the coolant line you see there on the back of the airbox. To do that, just use a pair of pliers and pull the clamp back a little bit away and then pull the hose off. Okay, next you're going to want to remove the Torx bits from the bottom of the radiator shroud. There's one on each side, just up next to where the bumper mounts, the upper bumper mounts are. To do that, you'll need a T30 Torx bit. Okay, next you're going to want to drill out the two rivets holding the mounting bracket to the center section of the hood. Okay, next you're going to want to remove the radiator fill tube and radiator cap. Simply push up on it and it slides out of its groove. And set that off to the side. Okay, next you're going to want to remove the mounting clamp for the radiator overflow bottle. To do that, you'll need a 10mm socket wrench to hold the nuts in the back and a 10mm socket wrench to turn the nut on the front. Okay, next you're going to want to remove the two mounting bolts for the outer hood assembly. There's two of them. One's located right here. The other one's located right in here. To do that, you'll need a 7mm socket wrench. Okay, now we got to remove the two on the other side. Again, use a 7mm socket wrench. Okay, now that we've got all the mounting bolts for the hood assembly loose, we'll simply lift up the hood enough to get the airbox out. Okay, here's what it looks like with the complete airbox assembly removed. Now I'll do a little cleanup before we install the new one. I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, now that I got it all cleaned up, we can get started on the install. Okay, next thing you want to do is go ahead and pre-install the intake tube onto the back of the airbox with the supplied hose clamp, and then we'll get it installed. Okay, now that you have the intake tube mounted to the back of the airbox, go ahead and remove the front mounting plate off the airbox. It'll make it much easier when trying to slide the airbox assembly in. Once you've got that done, go ahead and slide the airbox assembly in, and you want to hook the intake tube to the throttle body and tighten down the hose clamp. You can accomplish this by reaching in over the air intake or by removing the switch panel and reaching in from inside the cab. Okay, reinstall the front mounting plate using a 4mm Allen wrench. Okay, next is to reinstall the two mounting bolts to hold it to the front frame assembly. Reuse the mounting hardware that you took off of the original airbox to remount this. Next thing to do is install the crankcase breather. Simply plug it into the hole in the airbox and then connect the breather tube on the back with the original clamp. Okay. Next step is to install the drain plug in the bottom of the airbox. To do that, you remove the inner fender well panel on the passenger side to gain access to it and simply squeeze it in place. What's really cool about this drain plug is you don't have to remove it to drain the air box. Just simply squeeze it and the bottom of the drain plug opens up. Pretty nifty idea. And here's what it looks like from the inside. Okay, the only thing left to do on the inside of the air box is to install the filter. But first we're going to put some weather stripping along the top of the box for the lid so it doesn't rattle and makes a little bit of a seal. Okay, next step is to tighten everything down before we put the air filter and the lid on. Let's start with the coolant overflow bottle. The next thing we'll do is install the mounting screws for the outer hooded panel. We'll get them started by hand and then we'll use the socket wrench. Okay, let's do the 2 screws on the driver's side. Again, since these are self-tapping screws, you want to start them by hand before you put a wrench on them. Once you get a couple turns on them, then you can put the wrench on and finish them off. Okay, the next thing we want to do is install the Torx bits on the lower radiator grille shroud. Okay, the last thing to do to get the hood reinstalled would be to install 2 new rivets where you drilled out the last 2 on the frame. Simple pop rivet you can get just about anywhere. Okay, final steps, installing the Can Am air filter. I went ahead and put the pre-filter on it. Let's go ahead and get it installed. Simply slide it over top of the billet flange. You can use a flat blade screwdriver or an 8mm socket. I'm going to go ahead and use the socket. Go ahead and snug it up. Don't over tighten it because again you're just going to squish the rubber. And then check, make sure it's on good and tight. And that's that. Okay, the only thing left to do is install the lid with the 4mm Allen screws and washers. Make sure you have the washers. This completes the installation of our race air intake system on our Can Am Maverick. For other great products from TurnKey UTV, check them out online at turnkeyutv.com.